So a lot of times the protocol itself tends to be a barrier for recruiting patients successfully into the clinical trial.
Welcome to the Business of Healthcare podcast from the Center for Healthcare Leadership and Management. The center is based at the Naveen Jindal School of Management at the University of Texas at Dallas. The show, like the center, brings together business leaders and other forward thinkers to discuss how best to meet the challenges of a rapidly changing, increasingly complex healthcare industry. I'm your host, Dr. Bob Kaiser, Director of the Master's Program in Healthcare Leadership and Management for Professionals.
We have a timely topic to discuss today with an extraordinary entrepreneur. Please join me in welcoming Veer, Mehta, founder of Halo Health. Halo Health is addressing the digital transformation of the clinical trial industry. Welcome to the podcast, Veer.
Thank you, Bob. Very excited to be here.
Well, we know a little bit about you because you have a background with the University of Texas, Dallas. I think you have a couple degrees here in engineering. Is that right?
That is correct. So I'm an alumni of University of Texas at Dallas. I went to Eric Johnson School of Engineering to get my undergraduate degree in computer science and master's in software engineering.
Well, we always like it when we have someone who is local and innovative and hoping to change the world. So I said at the introduction here that it's a timely topic because we're talking about clinical trial industry. So why don't you give me a background of how in the world did you end up in the clinical trial industry? We'll get more into the details of what you're doing there, but share with us your path. How did you come about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my professional background, I've spent more than 15 years in new product development of medical devices and digital health solutions. During that time, I got an opportunity to work with, I would say, top 10 med device companies, including Medtronic, Minimed, Johnson & Johnson. Also worked on a variety of projects that were focused on drug delivery. And through this process, what was pretty evident is we were working very diligently to ensure that we're bringing innovative products to market in less than 18 months. So going from concept feasibility to getting the product ready for FDA submission. And then we noticed that some of these projects were running into bottlenecks or inefficiencies that we were noticing around the clinical trial process. And as I started surveying the market and started to speak with industry experts, I saw that the clinical trial market had not gone through a digital transformation. And noticed that there was a significant use of papers. Some of the processes, just the way they had been laid out, were quite inefficient. And so I saw an opportunity to step in and make an impact.
So to tell us, for our audience, just what's involved with clinical trials, because I don't think most people are familiar with it. We're starting to hear more and more about it in the news today. Obviously, these vaccines that are under development for the COVID-19 pandemic, you hear clinical process, clinical trials, but kind of give us the inside out. What's involved with that? Who's involved and what's the complications of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the sponsor or the pharma company that is responsible for the development and the commercialization is responsible for taking the drug through the clinical trial process. As part of this multi-phase process, they have to show safety and efficacy of the drug to collect critical data that is submitted into FDA as part of new drug application. And once the drug is approved by the FDA, then the therapy can be commercialized. There's additional requirements that the FDA places that is tied to what we refer to as phase 4 of clinical trials, which is focused primarily on looking at post-market surveillance and ensuring that there aren't safety concerns associated with the drug that has been recently commercialized.
So with your background making all these medical products, that's a big switch over from making medical devices and engineering things. I know that you said that you had both engineering management, and commercial front to back design. What was the impetus? What got you to focus on or open the door for you regarding this clinical trial business?
Yeah, so there were a couple of things that led to starting of Halo Health Systems. So my mentor at my previous employer had provided a very entrepreneurial setting, allowed me to build new capabilities and impact top line and bottom line. And once he moved on, I started missing that entrepreneurial environment. The other thing that happened was a close friend of mine, a direct report, someone I've known for more than 15 years. His wife was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And so as I was working closely with him through this challenging time, it was pretty obvious that they were facing a lot of challenges associated with coordination of care and getting access to new therapies. And we had several heart-to-heart conversations in our ability to bring new products to market pretty quickly, and that there was a need to add more efficiencies and digital technologies to further improve clinical operations within clinical trials.
So a lot's been said lately about virtual health, telemedicine, and things like that. Did that apply into this clinical trial process? What advantages did that open for you, if any?
Yeah, so with the Halo Health solution, it is a digital platform that is used to accelerate clinical trials for pharma. Our patient-centric solution offers a combination of telemedicine, remote patient monitoring, and patient engagement. And our focus is to streamline collection of data to reduce costs while increasing access and diversity. With the global pandemic that we are currently experiencing, what we have seen is an accelerated adoption of digital technologies. If you look at certain hospital systems, including Mass General, they're seeing a 10x increase in the number of telemedicine, telehealth visits. And so when these new technologies are being adopted as part of standard of care, the use of those technologies within the context of clinical trials leads to a faster adoption. So we've definitely seen significant interest in terms of introducing digital platforms like Halo Health into clinical operations for a combination of ongoing and new studies that are being planned.
Okay, so if I'm a pharma and I want to do these clinical trials, and we have this pandemic out there, so the typical person who might come in, do people have to come in for these clinical trials, and where do they come from? But I would think that would be somewhat of a barrier to find the right number of people to come in. And that should be a challenge, I guess, for anybody doing a clinical trial. Is that right?
You're absolutely right, Bob. So the traditional trials and how these clinical protocols have been laid out, it does require the patients, the participants to make frequent visits to the clinical site. And amid COVID-19, there is a level of fear and anxiety associated with getting infected by COVID-19. So there's definitely a hesitation and impact on participation and recruitment. We have, at one point, we had seen a 70% reduction in recruitment across therapeutic areas. So if you are leading clinical operations within pharma, or if you are responsible for the commercialization of a new therapy, I think it is extremely critical for you to have contingency plans in place around business continuity, because we will continue to see additional waves of COVID. And it is required to make sure that some of these planned trials that are part of the clinical pipeline are not being impacted. So the integration of digital technologies as part of clinical operations to minimize the number of visits that a patient has to make to a research site, to enable at-home visits, be it to administer the investigational product, to collect data that is required by clinical protocols. Those are models that pharma companies will absolutely need to depend on for ongoing success of their clinical programs.
So speaking of success with these clinical trials, do most of them find a path home, or most of them completed? What's the success rate on clinical trials, and what's important to these pharma companies to have a successful completion? My question really is, how successful are these clinical trials? And if they're not, why not?
Yeah, so there's several challenges that are associated with clinical trials. First of all, it starts with a clinical protocol. As we've seen over the last few years, there has been an increase in the complexity of these clinical trials. There have been an increase in the number of criteria that is being laid out for inclusion and exclusion of who can participate in these clinical trials. So a lot of times the protocol itself tends to be a barrier for recruiting patients successfully into the clinical trial. So as we engage with pharma and the sponsors, we take a very proactive approach to ensure that they understand some of the inherent challenges that are designed into their protocol. And we ask them to basically, by design, minimize the number of visits that a patient has to make to the clinical site, look at the type of data that needs to be collected as part of their clinical trial, and see how digital solutions like Halo Health can be leveraged to collect that high quality of data and have it made available in real time to the rest of the clinical research teams.
Okay, so it's just not about helping the pharma. It's also about reducing the burden on the patient too.
Yes, and one of the key criteria for someone deciding whether they want to participate in the trial or not, they're going to be looking at how is it impacting their already busy lives, what kind of travel requirements exist. More than 70% of Americans live more than 2 hours from a clinical research site. And based on the last survey that I came across, which was done across 600 clinical trials, on average, patients are traveling more than 25 miles to a clinical site.
When you started creating this product, okay, the Halo Health environment, your focus was, number one, to reduce the burden on patients, and number two, to make these clinical trials more efficient, more timely, and more reliable then. Because today we hear a lot about vaccine development and the populations that they're going after on these vaccine developments. A few of the pharmas are looking at, 30,000 participants, and they have selection criteria for who is eligible. And, it's managed in such a way where it's a double-blind test, et cetera. They have all kinds of criteria on it. But at the same time, they're wanting to address topics like the diversity in these trials. You want to have a good cross population, I guess. And I would imagine that the data management, that process is a key component of getting the right level of diversity in these trials. Does Halo Health play into that game?
Yes, we do. So in order for us to democratize access to clinical trials as an additional option for care, we need to make sure that we are providing the right level of visibility to some of these clinical trials, and also ensuring that we are lowering the burden that is placed on patients to participate in clinical research. As I had commented earlier, which it includes reducing the travel burden. It also includes reducing the burden that is placed on patients in terms of the types of activities that you're wanting them to support. Currently we see that there's less than 20% of ethnic minorities that are represented in clinical trials. And as you can imagine, when some of these drugs are being commercialized, with the lack of representation that we're seeing from some of these ethnic minorities, it poses a real risk in terms of these products getting commercialized and experiencing certain safety concerns once they hit the market.
This episode is brought to you by the Center for Healthcare Leadership and Management, the definitive resource for healthcare management education in North Texas. The center is based in the Naveen Jindal School of Management at the University of Texas at Dallas. It plays a unique role in training the next generation of healthcare leaders to meet local, regional, and national demands. The Jindal School uses its strengths in accounting, administration, finance, marketing, and information systems to educate highly qualified personnel for healthcare administration and executive leadership positions. The center is home to 7 healthcare leadership and management programs, including undergraduate and graduate programs, as well as executive programs for physicians and working professionals. For more information, visit us online at jindal.utdallas.edu/healthcare.
Okay, so let's shift to the entrepreneurial side of this discussion. So you've been at this a couple years now as the founder of Halo?
I have. I started the company in January of 2019, and it has been a very exciting ride so far.
So that's a pretty bold move. So you're working for these big companies where you got a good paycheck and all these great benefits and security. And now, what made you make the leap and go, I'm going for it? What was the driving factor here that said, I'm going to make that big step forward?
For me, it just, things just came together. As I mentioned earlier, there were certain events in my personal life, including a mentor moving on, the challenges that a friend of mine was experiencing. And then as I continued to go through market research and analysis, I saw an opportunity and, just looking at my core strengths, my background, my capabilities, and what we wanted to achieve, it was the right decision at the right time.
And that low-hanging fruit, when you can see a problem that you can solve and you've got the tools for doing it, I'm sure that kind of motivates you as well. Next question here for you. So you've been at it for almost a couple of years. Do you have a product that is out there yet? What's the status of your product? And tell us a little bit about how you get that to market in this complicated, medical world.
Yeah, absolutely. So the digital platform that we have created includes, so if you were to participate in a clinical trial today that is enabled by Halo, you would get access to a remote monitoring kit. You also get access to a fully integrated patient engagement app that helps you get reminders. It allows you to automate collection of biometrics data and patient reported outcomes of patient feedback. And we're taking all of this data, digitizing it, and pushing it to a HIPAA compliant cloud. We're using our web apps. The clinical research team is able to access this high quality of data in real time. Our product is in beta. We have successfully completed 2 pilots. We are actively working through our customer development efforts. In terms of our go-to-market, we are primarily focused on pharma and also targeting, I would say, small to medium-sized clinical research organizations, which would act as channel customers as part of our go-to-market strategy.
So what kind of partnerships have you found? Have you found other support groups that can help fund your initiative and help do research with you? Are you partnering with others in the community along this line?
Yeah, we are. So we're a Health Wildcatters company, which is a local healthcare accelerator here in Dallas. I currently have several interns that are helping us on market research and product research activities from UT Southwestern. We recently got accepted at Texas Venture Labs through McCombs School of Business, again, part of the UTE system, where we're going to get access to a multidisciplinary team to work on some commercial projects. And then in terms of partnerships, we have built a strong ecosystem of partners around technology, which includes connected devices and wearables. It also includes Uber Health, as we were looking to further reduce the friction that patients experience to participate in research, and also a network of progressive clinical research sites that are wanting to be part of the innovative ecosystem to integrate digital technologies as part of clinical operations. So these are sites that are currently located in Dallas area and Austin.
Okay, so with every business venture, we always ask the question, how do you make money with this? What's your monetization ideology that you've got underway?
With our product, the entire cost of our product is to be paid for by the sponsor or the pharma company. We have a subscription-based model where we are charging per patient per month. And that provides access to the patient engagement solution, including the connected devices and the patient engagement apps. We also have a flat fee associated to provide unlimited access to our web application, which provides operational metrics, analytics, and also the ability to capture and analyze patient data that is being collected.
Okay, so it sounds like you've got multiple ways. I'm sure that these trials are expensive, so they want to minimize the risks that they have. I'm sure some people would like to have a fixed cost program where they can get everything they want for a fixed price. How do you see that working out? Is that an option as well?
So in terms of fixed cost model, there would be options primarily looking at, I would say, lower complexity studies. So when I refer to lower complexity studies, if we're looking at, let's say, research universities that are performing ongoing research activities, they are going through a smaller number of participants as part of their clinical study. There's definitely opportunities for us to support some alternate models that would be a better fit for those institutions.
Well, I'm glad to see that innovation's taking place here. I mean, you're looking at an industry that's been pretty much set in its ways. It's had a lot of trouble in terms of access to participants. The technology is kind of giving you a boost with all the virtual health, but you're really looking at ways to, improve the value chain and the supply chain and really looking at new technology and really creating these new efficiencies. Is there anything that is unique about what you've done, or are you using pretty much standard ideas and technology and just applying them to an industry?
Yeah, so I would say that having connected devices, wearables, mobile and cloud technologies has allowed us to develop a very flexible yet scalable and secure product. At the same time, our focus, from day one was to basically break silos to lower that burden on patients. And so as part of that, what we have focused on is how do we create a fully integrated experience for patients, right? And what I'm referring to is a fully integrated patient engagement application. So when if you look at the point solutions that currently exist in the market, patients might either be using paper diaries or they might be using standalone applications to capture data. But it is very important from a patient experience standpoint to help them stay compliant, to give them the visibility across the tasks that they need to complete in a timely manner. So when you look at the dosing requirements, collecting biometrics data, patient feedback, upcoming visits, supporting telemedicine. When you are integrating those capabilities into a patient engagement app, what you're doing is you're significantly elevating that patient experience. You are keeping them engaged and you're keeping them compliant and part of the study till completion.
That's all about the client experience. The client experience means everything. And we see that taking place in all dimensions of our life. If you want to buy a car today, the old-fashioned way of buying a car is go down to a car dealer and deal with them and pick through their inventory. And now there's companies that totally redefine buying the car using technology online, everything from having it picked up, delivered to your house, paid for, financed, all from the luxury of your house, from your iPhone or your mobile device. And we're seeing that same type of client experience being defined as we deal with people like Amazon. When you buy something and it's so easily, delivered and returned and taken care of, the customer experience, the client experience. And that's what seems to be missing a lot today in healthcare. And people are really, they want that. They want to have that connection. And I think this technology and process that you're developing is a great step in that direction. So as an entrepreneur, I think you're going to be successful. You're surrounding yourself with the right support organization and people. I know we found out about you through the Dallas Business Journal, and I know you're doing other promotional things. And we're going to keep an eye on you and see how this works out. Getting these clinical trials goes way beyond the COVID-19 world that we're in. And as we advance confidently in the future with, technology and more pharmas and things like that, it shouldn't be such a burden for us to participate and get involved in these type of activities. So thank you for being with us today. Any last words that you'd like to share?
The integration of digital technology is a prerequisite for us to have successful clinical programs and launch of new therapies going forward. COVID-19 has accelerated the timeline, and we are very excited to be part of this process. So thank you again for having me on this podcast.
Veer Mehta, glad to have you here, founder of Halo Health and a graduate of UT Dallas with 2 degrees. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Bob.
Thanks for listening to the Business of Healthcare podcast. Join us online at businessofhealthcarepodcast.com to find episode links, notes, and more. Be sure to subscribe to the Business of Healthcare podcast on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcasting app. To learn more about the Center for Healthcare Leadership and Management, go to jundal.utdallas.edu and then search under the Center and Institutes tab on the navigation menu. Also, we want to hear from you. If you'd like to provide feedback, make suggestions for future guests or show topics, or just want to get in touch with us, email us at healthcarebizpodcast@utdallas.edu. Biz is spelled B-I-Z. And let us know how we're doing. I'm your host, Dr. Bob Kaiser, with the Center for Healthcare Leadership and Management, where we're leading change by changing how we lead.